All right, let's dive into the psychology of what you might call the misunderstood mind. If you've ever felt like you're just operating on a totally different wavelength than everyone around you, we're about to explore the real, research-backed reasons why that is. Let's get right into it. Does this question hit home? That feeling that your mind is this amazing engine that can solve anything, but it also just never shuts off? Well, you are definitely not alone in that. And psychology has a really clear explanation for this feeling. It's not a flaw. It's actually a feature of how your brain is wired. So let's just get one thing straight right off the bat. Feeling mentally overwhelmed or constantly thinking isn't a sign of weakness. In fact, what the psychology suggests is that it's often a sign of some serious inner strength. Think of it this way. Your brain is built for deep, continuous processing. It doesn't really have an off switch. And just understanding that it's designed to work overtime is the first and most important step to reframing your whole experience. So, what is actually happening under the hood of an analytical brain? Let's take a closer look at its signature moves and why it processes reality in such a unique way. The core concept we're talking about here is something psychologists call cognitive depth. And no, this is way more than just overthinking. This is your brain's default setting. It's automatically analyzing information, replaying conversations from yesterday, questioning decisions you made last week. Your thoughts are just constantly churning, even when you're desperate for a break. And here's the thing, this cognitive depth gets misinterpreted all the time. What other people might see as you being lazy, that's actually your brain getting massively bored by simple, repetitive tasks. It craves complexity. What looks like being disrespectful, that's really your mind's deep need to understand the why, the logic behind a rule before it can accept it. And what comes across as arrogant is often just your fundamental reliance on your own internal reasoning over, say, popular opinion. But all that analysis, all that constant mental activity, it actually creates a kind of superpower. It's a skill that's a real hallmark of high intelligence, the ability to just pause. So instead of just instantly reacting when a strong emotion gets triggered, the analytical mind hits the bricks. And in that tiny gap, that pause, it analyzes the situation from all angles and then chooses a deliberate response. This is something called cognitive inhibition, and it is the absolute foundation of emotional control. But this powerful mind isn't just about a high IQ. It's a processor. And for a lot of people, its core programming was actually written during some really difficult early life experiences. Let's look at how survival adaptations from childhood can become permanent traits in adulthood. This quote, it just says it all, doesn't it? So many of the traits we admire, like resilience, independence, grit, they weren't developed in times of comfort. They were forged out of pure necessity because there was simply no other choice. And you see this show up in very specific ways. People who had to grow up too fast often develop an extreme self-sufficiency because, hey, they learned that support wasn't always going to be there. Their nervous system can stay on high alert because calm might have once meant danger. They might hesitate to ask for help because they learned early on not to expect it. They often have this incredibly deep empathy, but they're also very careful about who they trust. And very often they feel responsible for the emotions of everyone around them. And I really want to drive this point home. These are not character flaws. They're not signs that you're broken. They are signs of a nervous system that did its job. It adapted brilliantly to intense pressure. It learned how to survive. Okay, so what happens when you combine that deep, analytical mind we talked about with this fierce independence that was learned from a tough past? Well, you get something pretty rare and incredibly powerful: internal validation. Internal validation just means that your sense of worth, your confidence, it comes from within. It doesn't depend on likes or comments or what the group thinks. Your own judgment, your own standards, that's what matters most to you. This is exactly why your first question isn't, is this popular? Your first question is, does this make sense to me? Your decisions are built on your own logic, not on what the crowd is doing. It's also why you might not feel that constant pressure to document every moment of your life online. Your experiences are valuable to you, whether or not anyone else sees them or likes them. You don't need that external proof. And it's why you probably don't derive your whole sense of identity from things like sports teams or other big groups. Your self-worth isn't tied to whether your team wins or loses. It's generated from the inside. All of these behaviors, they all stem from one place: a stable sense of self. It's a quiet confidence that just doesn't need a constant stream of outside approval to keep it going.
So, let's bring this all home. We've looked at the analytical brain, the echoes of the past, and the power of internal validation. Now it's time to redefine this whole experience. It's time to flip the script from flaw to feature. That constant thinking, that feeling of social distance sometimes, the frustration you feel with illogical systems. Let's be perfectly clear, these are not flaws in your character. They are the side effects. They are the price of admission for having a mind that processes the world with such unusual depth. It's the cost of seeing more patterns, making more connections, and thinking more deeply than most. Because you see, we tend to think of high intelligence as just being about solving problems faster, or being good at tests. But that is such a limited view of how it actually impacts your day-to-day life. Its true effect is that it intensifies everything. Your awareness of consequences, of other people's emotions, of inconsistencies, of meaning and meaninglessness. You basically experience life in high definition, with all of its incredible beauty and all of its sharp-edged challenges. So we're going to leave you with this question to chew on. Now that you understand the why behind your mind, the pattern, the blueprint, how might this new perspective change the way you see it, and maybe even the way you live with it?